Hey Oz, what are we watching this week?
This week we are watching a series of Monty Python's Flying Circus rejected skits, combined with urination jokes, and social studies taught by a really bad substitute teacher. This week's movie is Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. Hey listeners, welcome back to our final week of January. We are Let's Talk About Flicks, the weekly movie podcast where we take a theme for the month. We each take turns bringing a movie to the theme and we review them. I am one of your hosts, Oz.
And I am Curtis.
And this week we are finishing up January with Mel Brooks' Stinkfest, History of the World Part 1. Ugh. I'm so glad we saved the worst for last.
This one was a chore to get through, Oz.
Oh my gosh,
And
yes.
whether, I don't know if I should be ashamed of this, because I purport to be a Mel Brooks fan, as do you, Oz.
I am.
But neither of us had seen this.
No.
It somehow it slipped through the cracks.
And I think that's probably for the better. Because when we were, as youth, introduced to our Mel Brooks, au revoir, I would think that if this were one that popped up, it may have soured my overall opinion of Mel Brooks going forward, for no other reason than just I was young and dumb. So I'm glad that I'm smart enough now to realize that, what I watched before, as I'm sure you did too, were the ones we were supposed to watch. Your Spaceballs, your Young Frankenstein, your Blazing Saddles, like we've covered so far. So a movie like this, which has gotten a lot of clout, like it's one of those, you got to see Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1.
Do you? Do you really?
I guess if you're the kind of person that is a completionist, like if you consider when you're collecting baseball cards, you have to have the card checklist. The baseball card that has the checklist of other cards in the set, and you have to have that to complete it, then sure, you need to watch History of the World Part 1. But otherwise, you can find better ways to save your time.
Yep, you're the video game player who has to do every optional side mission. Because you just haven't finished the game. You haven't played the game unless you've done all of those.
And I am that person, and I still say don't watch History of the World Part 1. Like, just to give an idea, like Curtis and I, we always chat, pre-show about whatever we've been up to the last week. And so we spent so much time pre-show talking about other movies just to avoid talking about this one.
Yeah, I think somewhere in our subconscious we're like, let's just put this off and put this off.
Let's just get it over with.
So we ended up talking 2-3 movies down the road.
Right, that we've already started to watch to cleanse our palate of this one. Oh, it's bad. Give us some characters. What do we got?
Normally, this is the part of the show where we give the listeners a character rundown.
Guys.
Yeah, the important people here, and
not us.
And in this movie, there are no important people. There's Josephus and Moses and a caveman and
Nero
and whatever, and the 14 people that Mel Brooks plays, and I honestly did not even take the time to come up with a character summary because none of the characters matter.
Yeah, I drew the short straw on this one, knowing that being my movie, it was my job to bring the plot review. And I was like, oh, man. So I also didn't bother with writing down any characters. And I also wish I didn't have to bother writing down the plot, because there isn't one. Oh, my.
Speaking of the plot, Oz, how does History of the World Part 1 start off?
History of the World Part 1 starts out very promising. You've got a voiceover from Orson Welles.
Of all people.
And it's Orson Welles. He's got one of those voices. It's Orson Welles.
I will say, this is early in Orson Welles' career. This is pre-Transformers the movie Orson Welles narration.
His career really picked up steam after Transformers the movie. Yeah. So anything he'd done prior to Transformers, the Superman movies, those are just what he was barely in those. Those don't even count.
Citizen something.
Something. Was it some movie about roses and a sled?
I think it was about a cane.
Yeah. Yeah, there was other black and white movies in there where they had him hiding in the shadows. He was so unimportant. So this is definitely, he took the long route to success. You know, and this is one of those steps on that long road to success. So we kick off with Orson Welles giving us a narration, and then really it just goes downhill from there.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So he introduces us to a basically a 2001 The Space Odyssey ripoff with a bunch of crappy looking apes that have now become, you know, they could stand up on their own. So what do? Well, they instantly start making lewd gestures, and we are notified that they are our forefathers. So that's where we're at. They're, you know, in the terms of Bobby, in the words of the great Bobby Brown, everybody's humping around. That's what they're that's what they're doing.
Such a poet, Bobby Brown.
Right. So then we cut to the Stone Age. It's now the Stone Age. So we see, honestly, kind of one of the funnier bits of the movie that not in whole, but it had some of its jokes had their moments. And one of the first ones was the cavemen are trying to start fire. And I thought this was kind of humorous. You got cavemen and they've got rocks and they're clacking the rocks together and there's some straw and they're trying to start a fire and they can't get it done. In comes another caveman with a torch.
Already lit. Already ablaze.
He's got a lit torch and he brings it in. And so one of the cavemen drops one stone and takes the other stone and holds it up to the fire to get warm and then tosses the hot rock onto the straw, and of course nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then fade out. You know, fade back in. We're still in the Stone Age. Cave painting has been introduced. All this is narrated by Orson Welles because our actors are cavemen and they're just grunts and whatever they do. You know, the first language of humanity. And so, you know, he talks about the first artist is born. So he's drawing this, you know, this very, you know, beautiful, I guess.
Primitive, but beautiful,
yeah,
yes.
This very primitive buffalo, you know, because buffalo were around then. And so he's drawing it on this cave wall, and of course, and then, you know, the first art critic was immediately born afterwards. And this is where we get our first introduction to Mel Brooks and apparently his 80s fascination with urination. Because this is his first movie of the 80s. He's got a string of hits prior to this. The Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, all of those are before this, as well as High Anxiety and Silent Movie. He's got others in there as well. Yeah, he's been on a roll. But he's really relied on other bodily function jokes. And I was reading a review of Roger Ebert that Roger Ebert was kind of tearing him a new one as well, that there's just nothing funny about urination. So the world's first art critic comes up and he looks at this cave painting and then I guess lifts up his skin.
Andre the Giant-esque.
Yeah, you would say he would pull down his pants, but he doesn't because he isn't wearing pants. But he just urinates all over the cave painting. So
much to the chagrin of the artist. I will say, played by Sid Caesar.
Yes, played by Sid Caesar.
And Mel Brooks came up as a writer on your show of shows featuring Sid Caesar. So I would agree that despite the unevenness, this is one of the funnier segments.
Yeah. And so, but it's a series of skits. Like it's one basis of the Stone Age, but there's no, like, this is what we're introduced to. And so far that's fine because we've got nothing to compare it to. It's just a series of camera fade in, do a skit, camera fade out, camera fade in, camera fade out. So a lot of these skits, you know, to which we're introduced to the beginning of marriage, where of course, your stereotypical caveman comes out, hits a woman over the head with a club and drags her by her hair into his cave. We're also introduced to the beginning of homosexuality, which is the exact same thing, only it's a caveman hitting another caveman over the head. You know, and you're you know, introduction to the spear, where they throw where caveman he's got a spear.
This part got me.
Yeah. Caveman steps into view and he was speared right.
He was really happy to be there.
Gets speared right in the belly, right into the belly of a nice guy. you know, and so, you know, caveman are trying to, you know, somebody laugh, and then a dinosaur comes in, eats the caveman. You know, the introduction of music where one caveman drops a stone on the foot of another one, and he just screams out, and he liked the sound of the scream, and so they keep dropping rocks on people's feet, and next thing you know, they're singing a song. So again, just a series of skits. They're whatever.
They're fine.
They're fine.
They're
fine. They're not.
Yep. Some more funny than others.
Yeah, they're nonsensical, but it's so far it's your typical Mel Brooks approach. Yes, there's skits, which is different than what we've been reviewing this month, but some work, some don't, and that's just comedy for you.
You just keep rolling. Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, then we cut to, okay, that's it for the Stone Age. Now we're in the Old Testament.
Yep.
Which is just another skit.
Yeah. Just another minute or two.
You've got, you know, Mel Brooks playing Moses as God talks to Moses and asks him, you know, come up to the mountain. I want to give you, you know, the commandments or whatever. And you know, and this could be one of the more famous jokes from the movie, as Moses comes down from the mountain with 3 stone tablets of the 15 commandments, which he then drops one of the stones, which, you know, leads to just the 10 commandments because he's broken the other 5. And that's it for the Old Testament.
That's the Old Testament. We slingshot again into the future.
Right. And this is where the movie just falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah. To this point, we've had a couple quick hitting segments. You know, some funnier than others, but the pacing, the pacing, is good. Yeah.
Yes, we're at a fairly quick Saturday Night Live style pacing. You know, where we've got quick, skit, in and out, get it done, get the joke. They're there for a joke. There's no plot. It's just a joke, and then off we go. Mm-hmm. Now we're in the Roman Empire because, you know, you go from Stone Age to Old Testament to Roman Empire because this is the history of the world.
Yeah. It's not just the history of cave people in the Old Testament.
No,
they're capturing the entirety of history, part 1.
Yeah. So thus far, we're very accurate with how the history of the entire world has taken place, and we've entered the Roman Empire. All right, so you know, there's a couple of jokes here. Ha ha ha! 5 and 10 cent store. It's written in Roman numerals.
There's a street vendor selling columns.
Yeah, I do have that. There's a street salesman everywhere. Yeah. One man selling nothing.
Yeah. Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. You know, there's a sign for the annual orgy and buffet. I noticed Hugh Hefner's got a cameo there where he's told him he's just invented the centerfold. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Funny enough.
They're right. Yeah, they're demonstrating. You know, plumbing is introduced. Still, up to this point, even though this is a little bit longer, it has exited the skit format, and this just feels like the skit format with the camera still running. Like we're panning across these jokes as opposed to fading in and out of these jokes, which is fine.
And it's also it's a much bigger set. They're clearly on on like a backlot someplace as opposed to tucked into some indoor studio.
Right, and you're right. So I mean, this is where the budget starts to show up. So we're going to start showing more of it. Okay, fine. You know, they've introduced plumbing, and really,
that's one of my favorite gags in the movie.
Yeah.
I did like that line. That right out of your house.
And this is where we really get our first character introduction. Another Mel Brooks character. His name is Comicus. He's a stand-up philosopher. Yeah. And he's in line at the unemployment office with the great B. Arthur being the secretary at the unemployment office. But so he's looking for work, and of course, right before she pays him his unemployment or whatever, his agent shows up and says, I got you a gig at Caesar's Palace. Yell, ha-ha, because, you know, it's the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
You know, we see, you know, Comicus here, and then we cut to Gregory Hines in his first movie role, actually. This is the second time that Richard Pryor has lost out on the role in a Mel Brooks film. The first one because he was just too Richard Pryor and too provocative to to cast, and this one because, well, he was still Richard Pryor and caught himself on fire doing drugs.
Set himself on fire, quite literally.
So, right. And as much as I love Richard Pryor, you know, I think at this point in Pryor's career, I think Mel Brooks dodged a couple of bullets. Just because he was in a rough time right now. So we got Gregory Hines. And guess what? Did you know that Gregory Hines can tap dance? Because I actually did know that. And that's the first thing we need to showcase here is Gregory Hines can tap dance.
His dancing ability.
Yeah,
he's at a literal slave auction, which it's kind of hard to like chuckle at that. Like, okay, right. I get it happened, but
yeah. But he's trying to prevent himself from being lion bait by doing a long song and dance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got a man which is kind of ironically is a showcase for what the rest of the movie is, because we see a man beating a horse, attempting to beat a horse to death. And that's the first thing I thought of, even already, because we're not very far into this movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, so they are literally beating a dead horse now. But Mel Brooks saves this horse. The horse's name is Miracle. He will come back. Don't you worry.
Yep.
And we get our first fourth wall break, because it is a Mel Brooks movie. We got to break the fourth wall. I don't even remember what the joke was when he broke the fourth wall, but I know he talked to the camera.
A Vestal virgin named Miriam.
Oh, there we
came
go.
Up and because she was also upset about the horse getting beaten, and after she introduces herself as a Vestal virgin, that's when he turns to the camera and says, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Wink, wink.
Right there. I'm glad you paid more attention to that part.
Yeah, I was still tuning in at this point in the movie.
The great Madeline Kahn enters.
Oh.
She's the Empress Nympho, and she shows up and she agrees to employ Gregory Hines. Josephus is Gregory Hines' character. Josephus. She agrees to employ him. What was the Vestal Virgin's name? Was it
Miriam?
Miriam talks her into employing him to be her wine steward, and so she saves him. And you know, cut to Brooks's. You know, Comicus is played by Mel Brooks. He's now doing stand-up at Caesar's Palace. Enters probably the funniest character of the whole movie. It did get a little long in the tooth, but enter Dom DeLuise as Emperor Nero.
Yeah.
And he's Dom DeLuising himself through.
Yeah. A lot of physical humor.
A lot of physical humor.
The character is incredibly hedonistic. Is probably the best word you could use. Just, everything is in excess. Food, drink, women, men. Everything is in excess.
Right. Everything. Need more. Always got to have more. So he's presented with gifts from the far reaches of the world. And there's jokes with it. And it's just not funny. Mm-mm. Like, oh, here's a bathtub and we're going to shower you in gold. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, but instead of just like seeing his reaction to it, let's go ahead and have him get in the bathtub and then we'll shower him with gold and make this scene go 2 or 3 minutes longer than it needs to be.
Yeah, this is when the movie really grinds to a halt.
Yes.
Oh.
So Comicus gets called in to tell some jokes, and he's killing with just really awful jokes right away. Yeah. But that part was kind of endearing, watching these heavy-hitting comedians overreact with laughter to these really bad jokes. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just watching these actors act was kind of fun. He tells a fat joke. Well, of course, Emperor Nero's fat. He tells political jokes. Well, of course, he's the emperor. So put him to death. Got to put him to death. And instead, he changes his mind and forces him to fight Josephus to the death.
Yes, because Josephus had just spilled wine on Caesar. So
right.
They both had big oopsies.
Right. So
or Nero, I should say, not Caesar. Nero.
Right. Yeah, I switched it off too. I had him Caesar at one point, but doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So they're going to fight to the death. And again, okay, have them fight to the death. They start out, neither one of them have the physical capabilities of pulling off a fight scene, which in itself is okay. That's comical. But then we have to watch them try. And it's like, ugh. I missed the skits from earlier already, where you just faded in and out right before and right after the joke. Get it over with. But they don't.
This is like a comedy. You know, there's no peril. You know something's gonna happen.
And so they team up to fight their way out. Miriam saves Comicus. Josephus basically saves them both. Josephus ends up hiding with the eunuchs in the Vestal Virgin's room, in the Empress's chambers. And Miriam saves Comicus. She slips him through the back door of the same chambers. And then we've got just a couple of just dumb jokes. Like the Empress comes in, and the guards come in, and, you know, they're surrounded by Vestal Virgins. And that eunuch doesn't look right because he's not as big as the other ones. So, oh, he's the new guy. So, okay, fine. Well, let's test the eunuchs, because there's no way only a eunuch could resist the temptations of this dancing woman,
sexy dancer, whatever. So she comes out and she does her sexy dance, and the other eunuchs just stand there,
right? Because
they're eunuchs,
right?
And then she dances in front of Josephus, and was like the feather plumage of his like man skirt that he had on raises up.
Yeah.
Oh, hilarious.
Look, he's not a eunuch.
Yep.
And then he runs off. We get another Mel Brooks walk this way joke as Miriam. We've got Miriam, Comicus, Josephus, and Comicus's agent. And they're all fleeing, right? They're all trying to get away, to get out of wherever they are, the capital, Rome, I suppose. They're all trying to escape. You know, and we get another walk this way joke where they all then follow in line. The soldiers continue looking for them, and told you the horse is coming back. Comicus says, only a miracle can save us.
They wouldn't have named the horse earlier if it wasn't coming back.
Right. Only a miracle could save us. And then here we hear the whinny of Miracle the horse that was saved probably 7 minutes earlier, but it feels like 7 days earlier.
I don't know how long the sequence was, but it felt like it just went on forever.
Well, because we're still not done. Like, they get on the horse, they all hop on in the cart that Miracle is hauling, and they ride out of Rome.
Yep, it's Miriam, Josephus, and Comicus, and Swiftus the agent.
Oh, Swiftus, that's right. And so they all ride out of Rome, and we think, oh, good, we're done with this. We're not done with this.
No, the camera follows them.
The soldiers are in tow. They're chasing them down, and Josephus smells weed because, you know, he's the black guy.
And that's the joke. Ha ha.
That's the joke.
Ha ha.
The black guy can smell weed. So he smells some weed, and he rolls a giant joint, huge joint.
Yeah, like yardstick long.
Right. Lights the joint, and then as Miracle is chasing away, the smoke from this joint is trailing behind him. Basically, they're smoke screening the soldiers as they're chasing them, getting the soldiers contact high, and they stop following them because they're so high. We're still not done with this scene.
Nope.
The group comes across a river where a Moses figure, is standing next to the river, and they ask for another miracle. Well, Moses parts the river so that they can cross the river on the horse. All right.
Turns out the Moses was getting held up from behind. That's why his arms were up. So he technically wasn't commanding the river. Somebody had a little tiny crossbow in his back.
Yeah.
Bleh.
Okay. Because they're headed to Judea.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We're still not done with this scene.
No, or these characters. It continues on. More.
Yeah. Yes. So they make it to Judea, and they all get jobs at a restaurant.
Because that's what you do, I guess.
Yeah. Comicus is a waiter, and he gets sent to a party. So he goes into the party, and it's 13 guys around a table, and they're all deferring to Jesus, because Jesus is there. And He's there.
Played by John Hurt.
Yes, played by John Hurt. And so he'll, as Jesus is trying to figure out, and just be Jesus. He's Jesusing. he's there. Mel Brooks.
I think that's a verb.
Mel Brooks keeps interrupting them to get a drink order, or haha. It's jokes that you see in other movies that are funnier, and they shouldn't be, because this is Mel Brooks. Like, this guy should do it better than any other movie does it. But it
just doesn't work because you're already bored.
Right. Oh, it's boring. Yeah, it is boring. And so, so you've got, he's trying to get an order, and then Leonardo comes in, played by Lieutenant Hauser from the Police Academy movies. He's there to paint a portrait of Jesus. You know what? Hey, it's easier if all of you get on the same side of the table. And of course, then, Leonardo paints the Last Supper of Jesus and the disciples. And of course, Comicus is standing over his his left shoulder. So there you go. We're finally done. Finally done
with that sequence. Oh, it felt like an eternity to get through that, Oz. An absolute eternity.
I know that I really try my best to watch our movies in one sitting, just to keep focused on it. I couldn't do it. And you know that, because I texted you multiple times about, like, I can't do it. I can't. I felt like Rocky, like, cut me, Mick. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah, I think we both were sending texts to, like, unsolicited texts, like, man, I just started it back up again. Right. Glutton for punishment.
And we just came off an entire month of Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yeah, where some of those were painful, but, like, at least there was a coherent story.
I would rather watch 5 more of those than this again.
Oh yeah, give me You, Me, and the Christmas Trees any day of the week over this.
Right.
Dana McKellar, where are you?
I know. I would totally take it. So now we cut to the Spanish Inquisition, which is the next piece of history in the world, or at least with Spanish Inquisition now. We're set in 1489. The Black Plague sweeps the planet, and we read Torquemada. Again, played by Mel Brooks. Yep. He's the Grand Inquisitor. And this part wasn't bad.
It was okay
because it was contained.
Yeah,
like they had one thing to do, and they did it, and they moved on.
It was
so
brief.
He breaks into a song and dance about the Spanish Inquisition. That's really it. It was comical, I suppose. Mm-hmm. You've got a couple of Jewish prisoners that are hung up there, and they're part of the song. It was
played by Jackie Mason, and one of Mel Brooks's writing partners, Ronnie Graham, who played the priest in Spaceballs.
Yeah, I knew I'd seen it before, and so it was fun. It was the Spanish Inquisition was like the Springtime for Hitler Part 2.
Yeah.
Like it was, let's make a song and dance out of something that is not remotely funny.
About something that was absolutely awful.
Right, and it worked. It was fine. It was fine. And but then we're done, because that's okay. Mm-hmm. It was we came in, we got the joke, we got out. So then we moved to the French Revolution, which you could think of as the Roman Empire Part 2.
Yeah, we're back to the grind.
Oh my God.
We're back to the grind, Oz.
Yes.
We're in 1789. We do open on a fun little sequence. Another one of those street vendors. Someone is selling apple cores.
Right, dead rats.
Dead rats. And that's where the nothing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I was wrong. How could I possibly confuse the street vendors from Roman Empire with the street vendors from the French Revolution?
You're right. This basically is part 2 of the prior sequence.
Yeah.
They're just wearing different outfits.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the French Revolution, of course, it centers around the commoners of France just being fed up with the aristocracy of France and revolting. And so Cloris Leachman, she's rallying, Cloris Leachman and her mole. Her Pinocchio mole.
Yeah. It was like a baby carrot stuck out of her face.
Oh, it was so long. It was so gross. So Cloris Leachman, she's rallying the French peasants. We're gonna kill the King Louis. That's what we're gonna do.
I love how at one point in
they're
the
like,
meeting she refers to the other people there as fellow wretches.
right.
And so beaten down, that's how they perceive themselves.
Yeah, and it's a disgusting set.
Yeah.
Everybody's just dirty and
gross.
And then so we cut to the palace where Mel Brooks is back. He's playing King Louis. He's playing chess literally with human pieces. Yes. Which is okay, that's fine. Like, you've got your opulence. This is where we're at. You've got such power that you could force humans to be your chess pawns, including the queen, who, when she gets taken in the game, it's just a gang rush of taking the queen.
Yeah, quite literally.
It's it's a lot of to bring this movie full circle. It's the same actions of our apes in the 2001 opening of our film here. Mm-hmm. They're doing the same thing. They're dogpiling the queen. I wonder if any of those guys realize that not all of them were actually taking the queen. Like, it's a very large pile of men, and they're all like, "We got her." You got somebody.
That was a big man pile,
right? So, and he just spends his time forcing himself on women. Just Mel Brooks. It's it's Mel Brooks doing his best Quentin Tarantino foot fetish. Of I'm Mel Brooks, I'm in charge, and I'm going to hire big busted actresses and shove my face in their cleavage.
Yeah, quite literally.
Because I'm in charge, and this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And it's 1981, which, doesn't make it okay, but it was funnier, I suppose.
I guess. Maybe.
Yeah. To be fair, in 81, you and I were both doing the same thing.
Well, we were both, depending on when, like 2 years old, give or take.
Yeah. So we were probably doing our best King Louis impression. So.
We are introduced to another basically inconsequential character played by a Mel Brooks actor, Harvey Korman, as Count de Monet, or as everyone calls him, Count de Money. You get it, Oz? Do you get it?
Count the money. I got it. I know. It was... Ugh. Just felt bad.
They did have a little callback to the Hetty Headley because he kept correcting them. It's Monet.
De Monet. At one point he's talking to him about the peasants, and as Mel Brooks as King Louis is pretending to care as he's literally shooting poor people out of the sky.
Yes.
They're his clay pigeons.
Catapulting them.
Right. And so we get another... literally, my notes say another segment that just drags on and on. Like, I didn't even... Like... so
the whole fourth wall break, he turns to the camera 3 different times. It's good to be king. Right after he's shoved his face in another woman's cleavage or something to that extent.
Right. It's good to be the king. So I guess the plot around this is De Monet has caught wind that the peasants of France are going to ransack the palace and kill the king. So we need to find the king, a doppelganger, so that we can have someone pose as the king and get you out of here and let them kill the fake king. So we do have Mel Brooks playing another character in this scene.
Because we can't get enough Mel Brooks on camera in this movie.
No, he's doing his best Peter Sellers impersonation. Or your best Eddie Murphy. I guess you take your pick of what he's doing. I would put him more in the Eddie Murphy category here. Not Coming to America Eddie Murphy, but Norbit Eddie Murphy.
That's a good distinction there.
Norbit. I'd probably rather watch Norbit for the first time than this for the first time. Because at least I know Norbit's going to be bad. I can go in prepared for that level of bad. And get, not anything out of it, but at least get what I expected. I was expecting more. So, King Louis' body double is going to be, they just keep referring to him as the piss boy. Yeah,
because his job is to hold a bucket of urine and walk around to people who need to urinate into the bucket.
Now, one thing we have already identified is we have already passed the Roman Empire, which introduced plumbing. And we have fast-forwarded now through the Spanish Inquisition into the French Revolution. So I don't know my historical accuracies enough, but there's probably a decent chance that there's plumbing in the castle.
For all the anachronisms in this movie, yeah.
There's probably plumbing. We've already been introduced to it. But instead, we have someone walking around with a bucket, like a metal bucket that people just urinate into.
Bucket of pee.
And they do this joke too many times. Yeah. Like, okay, it's like, hey, that guy over there's got a bucket. Go pee into it. Oh, fine. The first time I was like, okay. But then they just keep doing it over and over and over again. So King Louis has been replaced. He's facing down the revolution.
There's a little meaningless subplot there about another busty woman whose dad is imprisoned, and she gets roped into all of this.
Yes, for no reason than just she's a busty woman.
No, we need someone pretty to look at next to all these horny male characters.
Right. Yeah, I didn't realize they had snaps back then because she just kept ripping her shirt open. like buttons are gonna tear off. You can't do that repeatedly with buttons. You're gonna have to snap that up. So, we're coming into the end of our film here, and oh no, there's peril on the horizon. The revolution has hit the palace. They're going to kill the fake king, and then guess what, everybody? A miracle arrives. Because it is a Mel Brooks movie, and the final act cannot end normally, we have Josephus from the Roman Empire showing up on Miracle the Horse to save the King Louis and doppelganger.
The fake King Louis.
The fake King Louis
and the different busty woman.
Well, she's a Vestal Virgin because she was saving herself. She was going to be a nun, but she was willing to give herself up to save her father. I guess Dad's in this too. I forgot about Dad, who's just crazy. There was this funny little skit where they're going to free him, and so he thinks he's got birds all over the place, but they're just dead mice. Yeah. So he keeps offering them out the cage window to fly away. He just keeps dropping. All these dead mice just fall from his hands. Really, the funniest parts of this movie don't have Mel Brooks in it.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Because Mel Brooks he's a comedy mastermind, but Blazing Saddles was not a Mel Brooks acted movie. Yeah, he was there as a character, a couple of characters, and those couple of characters were they weren't acted well in Blazing Saddles. When he was the governor,
they weren't supposed to be acted well.
No. And of course, Spaceballs, where he plays Yogurt, it was fine, but he's not an actor. He's not going to carry a movie. And in this movie, he was supposed to carry the movie. Yeah. I haven't seen High Anxiety. I believe he stars in that as well. But yeah, the funniest parts of this movie are when you let comedic actors do their job. And so they write off. You've got, like I said, King Louis' imposter, his virgin, Josephus. They're all on Miracle, and they're writing off towards the big ending. Yeah. Because they realize they're in a movie. We're riding off towards the big ending
which is literally a giant stone plateau that says the end.
The end. So then we cut to because it's History of the World Part 1, and this probably is the funniest part of the movie. Is the coming soon trailer for History of the World Part 2, where we're introduced, because they only covered up to the French Revolution. So we have yet to cover Nazi Germany, which we get Hitler on ice. Hopefully these aren't chronological, because then we hit a Viking funeral.
Yes.
Where the joke.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So they take off their horned helmets and then reveal that they actually have horns attached to their heads.
Right. That's the joke of the Viking funeral one. And then we end with a longer than usual Jews in space,
which is flying 6-pointed spaceships,
right? The Flying Star of David's, and your rabbis piloting these spaceships.
Funny enough,
it's but again, it's because it's in and out.
Yeah,
gets in,
quick,
gets the joke, gets out. And that's what made the movie, when it worked, that's what worked, is the quick entrance and exit of the jokes, move on to the next joke. The Roman Empire and the French Revolution were just slogs.
Yeah. They should have been, 3-4 minutes, and they were like about half an hour each.
Well, and the plan, of course, the joke was, they call it part 1. They never intended to make a History of the World part 2. So this was the joke. This is part 1. Part 2's never coming. I'd have much rather them chop up those segments into the way they've done the other ones and actually just try to squeeze more historical jokes in here and do more world history that you've promoted and actually keep it in that same pacing, because it just didn't work. Didn't work.
No, this movie was an epic fail on an epic scale.
Yeah, a lot of money invested in this. It was another 6 years before Mel Brooks had another film come out, and that was Spaceballs, which, again, he lets actors take the lead and they get the job done.
Yeah, you get surrounded by the right people. You have somewhat of a linear enough story.
Right.
And you get out of the way.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There was a plot to those. There was not a plot to this one. And I touch on that a little bit, coming up. So that's History of the World Part 1.
1981's History of the World Part 1, folks. At this point in the program, Oz and I give our own unique rating to the film we just watched. Oz, how would you rate Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1?
F. Yeah, if I were writing a term paper on the history of the world and I used this as my reference, I would fail. I would fail the assignment. The teacher would give me the Billy Madison speech of we're now all somewhat dumber.
Yep.
But yeah, this was an F.
Uh-huh.
How about you?
My rating would be what one of the street vendors was selling. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I would take a dead rat over this.
He was, I don't know, maybe
an apple core.
Give it 4 apple cores. One of the few jokes that works.
Yeah, if they were few and very far between.
And
literally centuries between.
I mean, I did laugh during this movie, and that's the frustrating part, is because there were moments where I was laughing. Some of the caveman stuff was funny. Some of the initial lead-ins to some of the longer scenes were funny.
Right,
but it just didn't work overall. And it felt like a chore to get through this movie.
Yeah, it did. It was very much a passion project of Mel Brooks. Based on the successes of the movies he had in the 70s. He was given the green light, he was given the budget, and he worked with his friends. You can't say they didn't enjoy making the movie, but they had more fun making it than anybody had watching it.
One of my coworkers, I'll keep this brief, loves this movie, and he and I have very similar taste in movies. Like 70s and 80s, like comedies. The Caddyshack and those kinds of movies that just kind of fun, goofy, silly movies. And I told him we were doing this, and he was really excited. Gary, I hate to tell you, this movie sucks. It has some funny lines, but this movie just doesn't work, my friend.
It's similar. I've got a student, and he's a freshman, so that should tell you a little bit more. I can't say he listens to all the podcasts, but he does enjoy knowing what movies we're going to be covering. Mm-hmm. And so he's a Mel Brooks fan, and he was very excited to know we were covering the other three. I doubt he's a high school kid. He's not going to find the time to sit and watch and listen to a podcast. But when I told him we were doing History of the World, he got very excited. Oh God, I love that movie. After watching, I'm like, I get it, because you're a 14, 15-year-old kid. This is your humor.
Yeah.
And it's not a passing on people that do enjoy it, because clearly people enjoy it. It's got like a 6.3 rating on IMDb or something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have a horrible rating.
No, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah, me either.
Me. I can say I've seen it. I will remember I didn't like it. If someone asked me 10 years from now, I'd be like, I would say was episode 13 of our podcast. Because, we'll be 10 years into this podcast.
Oh, then. Yeah.
This is never ending.
No. Yeah. Good 700 episodes later.
Yeah, I remember that was episode 13, and I gave it an F.
I gave it 4 apple cores.
And so, shall we hit the 3, 2, 1s?
Hit the 3, 2, 1s. This is our finale segment, folks. This is where Oz and I each share 3 goods, 2 bads, and 1 about the film that we've been discussing. Oz, what are your 3 goods to History of the World Part 1?
Mel Brooks, he was having so much fun making this. He directed it, he wrote it, he starred in it. I mean, clearly he's shoving his face of, busty actresses for half of his screen time. So that's my first good, is at least he had fun making this movie.
we didn't watching it, but he had fun. Right. He had a good time.
He enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, I text that to you. Mel Brooks is having so much fun. And you go, well, at least somebody is.
Yeah, get a face full of cleavage whenever he wants.
And so my second is Cloris Leachman's giant mole.
Not Cloris Leachman, the giant mole that was her face.
That sucker was long.
It's like a celery stalk coming off there.
Yeah, it was. It was it was very Pinocchio-esque.
It's like Marty Feldman's hump in Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, very much so. And it was, nobody ever drew attention to it, which is what made it even funnier. Yeah. She just slapped this 3-dimensional mole on her face. It had a surface area.
I love how you frame that, because almost every other joke in the movie, it's like they're pointing at the joke, saying, "Hey, right. Wasn't that funny? Wasn't that funny?"
Yeah. And so this one is just, it was there. If you noticed it, great. If not, whatever. But I did, and I found it very funny. Mm-hmm. In a movie, few and far between of things to actually say are good. I enjoyed that little gag. And then my third is Jews in Space. Not only just because it was funny, but it was also the end of the movie. Yeah.
It's very on brand for Mel Brooks too.
Yes, very much so. And so I did enjoy that little skit.
Yeah.
Jews
yeah, because it was 30 seconds. It made its joke, and then it left.
Right.
And that's great. That's fine.
And it was the end of the movie, so that worked too.
That too.
It was like, oh boy, What about you?
My 3 goods, again, I had to I think like you, we had to kind of pick and choose some things here. Madeline Kahn is one of my goods. I did say that, like in the other movies we've talked about, that she's been in this month, Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, when she's on screen, the chemistry is there. The jokes land better. There's like an aura or an energy that she brings that the other actors, the other performances just didn't have in this movie.
And it's all her, because the jokes she's saying really aren't good jokes.
No, but she sells it.
Her delivery is awesome.
She sells it so well. And so tip of the cap for Madeline Kahn for making it through this just slugfest. Ugh.
Right.
Oh, let's see. My second good at the beginning of the movie, and again, kind of like your goods were all pretty quick hitting goods. This is another one. The big belly caveman who jumps out and goes, "Hey!" Then he gets a spear in the belly. Oh! He was so happy to see him. Hey! And
it was just funny.
Yeah, and then the invention of the spear did him in. Oh, poor guy.
picked the wrong day to visit.
to be the kooky neighbor.
Right.
Then I'll say my last good. We'll go with the street vendors. Again, fun intros to some scenes. Yeah. Everything that happened after the street vendors was awful, but the products they were selling, the anachronisms that were there. The plumbing one was funny. The apple cores,
right.
Nothing. I'm selling absolutely nothing.
just quick hitting. Again,
you don't need to take your time, or it's okay to take your time. You don't need to linger on jokes. Just have your laugh and move on. And that's what those jokes all did, or those performances all did.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Oz, what are your 2 bads?
Oh, man, this is like Bizarro World. We've spent the last 3 weeks talking about how nitpicky we are to find something bad. and how easy and how hard it was to narrow down the good. And this week is like the inverse
it's the
of that.
exact opposite. It's like we just traveled through a wormhole.
Yeah, and so my first bad is the last 3 weeks I've talked a lot about the plot itself could carry the film, and that is what made the jokes stick. It's like the jokes were barnacles to the plot of the ship plot of it's going to go forward and it's fine, and the jokes are there, and that's what really makes it work. There's no plot tying this movie together, and so it's relying solely on the jokes, like especially the Roman Empire scene, and it just forces it to drag because you've introduced us to a style in the opening, and even with the Old Testament of quick hitting skit type jokes, and then you slam on the brakes for 25 minutes and make us watch an act that doesn't hold anything, and so you really, we were just screwed around with joke, slow plot for no reason, and then we cut to the Spanish Inquisition, and then we're back to the slow. So it's just the movie just really just drags into the worst possible parts. And my second one, it's just not funny. If I watch a comedy, I expect to laugh at something. Either I'm laughing because the jokes are good, or I'm laughing because the movie's so bad. It's either intentional or unintentional comedy. And this is just a really bad recipe of intentional comedy that just didn't tickle my funny bone. It just didn't work for me. And I just didn't find the movie funny outside of a few gags. And that's it, gags. You can't make an hour-and-a-half movie based on gags. You've got to have something else going, and they just didn't have it. How about you?
Too much Mel Brooks. One is just simply there's too much Mel Brooks on screen. We talked about it a little bit before, but again, the other movies worked with his performances, for all the reasons you gave, that there is some kind of linear plot, but like his characters for the most part were kind of in and out. Young Frankenstein, I think he just had a voiceover part, and that was it. He wasn't even on screen, and that was one of Gene Wilder's stipulations to make that movie, was that Mel Brooks would not appear on screen, and there was just too much on-screen Mel Brooks in this. Mel Brooks is hilarious. The guy is a legend, but like he has limitations as a performer and as an actor, and there was just too much of that on display here.
And to piggyback on that, he's also very self-aware. He produced The Elephant Man by David Lynch, and it is a fantastic movie. Just a fantastic movie. But he knew if my name showed up in the credits, everybody's going to think it's a comedy. And so, he knew he had good taste. He knew what made cinema, and he knew his limitations, and he knew what his name and brand meant. And this, like you said, this was just, it just sprung a leak that wouldn't stop. It just kept going. So I'm with you on that one. I'm sorry. Number two.
And my other one is also performance-based, because I would say, your first point, the pacing is by far the worst thing about this movie, but you've already hit that. The other one was Gregory Hines. Gregory Hines, great man, great performer, but he just didn't work in this. You had mentioned something a little earlier, Oz, that I actually disagree with. You mentioned that, on Blazing Saddles, it was a good thing that Richard Pryor did not play the role that Cleavon Little played. In this movie, I think he would have made a better Josephus than Gregory Hines, just because I think you needed some more of that goofiness. Gregory Hines, not known for his comedic chops, and it just, he didn't sell the jokes right. The performance felt out of place. And again, I know it was early in his career. I think I had read Madeline Kahn actually kind of recommended him for the role at kind of the last minute because Richard Pryor had to pull out, and it just didn't work. And the combination of his performance and Mel Brooks and them trying to play off each other during that whole Roman sequence was part of the reason why it just ground to a halt.
Right.
So Gregory Hines, I love you, but man, you didn't work in this movie.
Well, and just, a little clarification. My comment earlier was more on what was going on in Pryor's life at the time. Yeah. Not so much that he couldn't hold his own in a movie like this, because I absolutely agree. Any movie with Richard Pryor is improved.
Superman 3.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just more like he's at a stage in his life where he's catching himself on fire with drugs, that a lavish movie. You know, just who knows what kind of recipe for disaster that may have been. That was where I was
going. I
get
that.
So I am a Pryor fan. I've always been a big fan of The Toy. I watched that. I can't tell you how many times growing up as a kid. It was on repeat. It was on HBO all the time. So, but yeah. So I'm with you on your two bads.
Okay.
I feel bad for Gregory Hines because he's a talented performer.
Yeah, he is.
But you know, when you're trying to share a scene with somebody who can't carry it themselves, it's like it's like your first time wrestling match with somebody who can't sell a move.
Yeah.
And it was rough to watch.
So Oz, what was your one for History of the World?
My one in retrospect is, what was I thinking picking this one? You know, we had talked a little bit before about do we want to do the producers or High Anxiety, and we both agreed that neither. Like I originally was thinking producers, and Blazing Saddles was left out of my list, not because it's not fantastic, but just because I think we both weren't sure where we would have the criteria to discuss such a film. I think we did fine with it. That was the only reason Blazing Saddles was not there. For me, it was a little selfish of I wanted to pick two movies I haven't seen before to just kind of expand.
Yeah.
I'm wishing we would have kept producers and got rid of this one instead of Blazing Saddles. So don't know what I was thinking there, but so be it. How about you? What's your
My and I'm reading verbatim from my notes, is why and what's the point? Just why? Why is this movie?
I don't know.
It's kind of like the scene in Avengers Endgame where they're like where is Gamora? Who's Gamora?
Oh, yeah.
Why is Gamora? Like why is History of the World Part 1?
Right.
Like
why is it here?
There's no point to it. And if you want to make a short with some gags, make a short. That's okay, but you don't have to stretch the short out 130 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes, 90 minutes. Oh, it's just
it felt like 210.
Yes. Oh,
it was bad. It just I don't know. I think this is probably let's spin the positive out of this.
Sure.
Episode 13, and I would say this is probably our first dud.
Yes, because we expected the Hallmark holiday movies to not be good, but
we did.
Yeah, but those movies did what they purported to do. They were what they purported to be.
Right.
You didn't expect anything more out of them.
Well, and we went into those movies knowing that you and I are not the target demographic for those films. And so I feel like we were respectful enough to go in with those tinted lenses on, knowing these movies aren't for us. We're going to give them the best shot we can. Well, this movie's for us.
Yeah, this is supposed to be in our wheelhouse.
Right. And this wheel fell off. It was...
it was left in the caveman's cave.
Exactly. And so there you go. This is History of the World Part 1. This does wrap up our January theme of Mel Brooks films. We are taking a new theme for next month, February, the month of romance.
Ooh.
Curtis, what is our theme for next month?
Our theme for this month is wife's choice.
Yeah.
So we are both married to females. We both have wives, and we turn the keys over to them. Said, so you get to pick whatever you want, and has to loosely be classified as a romance.
Right.
That was the only stipulation.
It needs to be a romance. Yeah. Which is not hard in cinema to find a romance. You know, somebody could have said Evil Dead, and we'd been like, okay. Ash has a girlfriend. Yeah. Let's do it. But knowing, that's why we turn it over to our wives. It's because their idea of a romantic movie is different than our idea of a romantic
Well, and frankly, they're smarter than us two, Oz. So
absolutely. We were smart enough to latch onto smarter people.
Yes,
and
that's what you do, folks.
That's what you do. So we are kicking off next. This week was my pick, so next week is yours. So what do we have next week?
So we are hitting the ground running next week, Oz, with a film that some might question as a romance. However, 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula is the first movie that my wife Melissa put on the docket for us. And that movie is an aggressive movie, and we will aggressively describe it next week.
Yes,
guys.
we will. Yes. I love that movie. And I'm sure we'll touch on it too, that if you do question the validity of Dracula being a romance, then you're not familiar with the character of Dracula, as he is very much a romantic figure. And his inability to find love, etc., 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 is what makes him such a romantic literary figure. So we get to see Francis Ford Coppola and all of his money lavish the screen.
Yeah, I followed you, or I followed you through an ocean of time to find you, or something like that. Is a quote from that movie. Doesn't get more romantic than that, folks.
No. It's even got Lydia Dietz.
it does have Lydia Dietz. It also has.
He's saying
it also has Wesley. Wesley.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yep. I forgot he's in there.
He's in there.
So yeah, because her original pick was going to be Princess Bride, so we swapped out one Carrie Elwes role for another.
we met our Carrie Elwes quota for the month.
That's probably for the year. Yeah. That'll be fun though. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. I mentioned it to my wife Jenny. I think she said she hasn't seen it, so she's going to try and watch that one with me, which should be fine. And of course, then I've got a couple more coming, and I know you do as well. And we definitely throughout the month hit various definitions of romance through our movie selections. And so we're definitely starting out with the much more aggressive, predatory style of romance.
Well stated. Sincere, but predatory.
Exactly. And we'll head into some other facets of romance as we go along. Well, let's wrap this bad boy up. You guys know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, review, 5-star, tell your friends, whatever you need to do. You find us on social media. Put the links, you'll see them down below. You've got a website as well, and watch us on YouTube and do all the things you're supposed to do. So if you enjoyed Mel Brooks Month, we appreciate you coming along with us. Hopefully you got satisfaction out of 100% of these episodes as opposed to 75% of the movies that we enjoyed. And you got anything else to share?
No.
Before I send it off?
It's been a pleasure doing Mel Brooks Month. I look forward to wives' romance movies next month. And
I do too. And so it'll be fun. And then we've got to figure out what we're doing for March. I do, Melissa texts us both. It cracks me up when she sends both of us a text knowing she lives in the house with you.
It's best that we not see each other face to face. It's in the public interest.
Yeah, it's the element of surprise, as always, at your home. But she sends us a text of giving us, topic ideas moving forward. So, and I'm like, hey, that'll be an easy one to run with if we decide to.
I think she needs an executive producer credit.
Yeah, so we've definitely got ideas on the docket. At some point, we should probably start, because I know we sat down before we even started the show and sketched out a bunch of topics, but we haven't really put dates to any. And I think as we've gotten rolling, we're a little more fine-tuned. We should probably at some point start, penciling in what we're doing each month, just so that we can have a little head start there.
We'll get there.
But I really enjoyed this, and we're out here for January. We'll see you guys at the beginning of February. For Let's Talk About Flicks, I'm Oz.
I'm Curtis.
And we will catch you guys later. Thanks for coming.